So thanks again, everybody. As always, this is Peplink University. We've got Peter West, Professor P here, and I'm Travis Durick, Product Manager at Peplink. Today, Peter, retail?
Retail. Today we're going to talk about retail, and it hits a little close to home for me because I do own my little ice cream stores, and so I use Peplink in my retail locations, and so it's a lot of fun. But we kind of created a little fun little commercial a year or so ago about like Bob's ice cream store needing the 20x for retail connectivity. And when we decided, what are we going to do for July? And I was like, well, we're going to do these vertical series, right? Talking about how Peplink works in specific verticals, and this one being on retail connectivity really hits close to home. Is like I said, for my ice cream store, but also for several of our really high end customers that are adopting Peplink for branch and retail operations, and I don't think they're getting enough visibility. And so I thought it'd be a fun webinar just to talk about how awesome Peplink can be for various connectivity requirements in the retail field.
Yeah, and I think retail is one of those markets that Peplink really had early successes in because we've got such a scalable solution. And so this is a great webinar to kind of refresh and show people why that was an early success for Peplink and what it can do for anybody in the retail field.
And not only the hardware platform or scalability, but also price point. I mean, we have some of the best price points on these low-end Cat 4 and Cat 7 routers. So it creates an incredible value proposition for retail users.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It adds up quick when you got a lot of locations for sure.
Yeah, right. Some of the challenges that I think retail people experience is centralized network management, like an easy way to see your locations, get alerts on the status and health of their connections. Like, are my WANs up and down? Am I running on 5G? Or, what is the status?
Yeah,
as well as
I've been into a lot of different retail places, chain restaurants, those kind of pizza places, and then like you look at the technology in there, and there's 5 different vendors most of the time,
yeah.
right? And it's like central management. That's what we're talking about, right? You've got all these different systems, camera systems, phones, and your router too. So
And everybody is agnostic. They all these vendors. It's like NCR will come in and just, hey, I'm going to put in my firewall with my system. It's a my PCI compliance, my settings, and it doesn't matter what else is going on, guest Wi-Fi or security systems or fire systems or anything else that might be necessary. And so having visibility and to the network is crucial, I think, especially if you're managing lots of locations. I think it's really important, and the ability to centrally manage firewall settings, wireless settings, things like that is lacking in the branch and retail space heavily. The other thing is reliable wireless connectivity. Having reliable wireless networking that's easy to manage and easy to scale. A lot of times they'll go to Best Buy and buy just whatever off-the-shelf Wi-Fi product and plug it into their network because they really don't know. They don't really have cost or budget for either high-end products, or they just don't know. What do I plug into this network? And so a lot of times once you get this hodgepodge of vendors, it's like, oh, I needed guest Wi-Fi. So I, ran to Best Buy and just grabbed whatever product was on the shelf at the time. And now you have this unsecure, unmanaged, just Wi-Fi device just basically plugged into your LAN. I mean, one time I was showing a customer, I was sitting up in North Carolina at a coffee shop, and I was like, hey, look, I'm browsing your QuickBooks server. Like you plugged this little Linksys Wi-Fi device WAN into your network. Well, the LAN of that network is your point of sale, and you basically are giving everybody access to your servers without even thinking about how that's being secured.
And so done their PCI compliance, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh, we just plugged in a Wi-Fi network into our secure network, so that's now gone. And so it's important to know, to be able to see that, and then also be able to give those guest Wi-Fi networks or staff Wi-Fi access to the network. And then the two that I added that is transaction stability, and I did say point of sale stability originally, but transaction stability. In other words, whatever your critical application is that you're running for your retail, Could be access to your parts platform. It could be access to point of sale, credit card processing, et cetera. But the idea is we need to make sure that those transactions don't get interrupted. If you're running an ATM, you want to make sure that when they put in that credit card, if the internet messes up, that credit card still goes through. You don't get a failed transaction. Then the customer gets afraid. Oh, am I going to get double transaction, or am I going to have a single transaction? You go, oh, let me watch this for you, right? And so transaction stability is actually incredibly important for retail and branch, because it creates customer stability. The customer is happy knowing that transaction occurred, without going, oh, do I need to watch my credit card statement for the next couple of days to see if I got double charged?
Yeah.
And
From the locate, from the business owner's side too, like, okay, you just look at a lunch rush in a restaurant, right? Like if the line's too long, people leave. It doesn't matter what the reason, right? They just kind of like get impatient and either just turn around right away or they leave shortly after. But if you start failing transactions, that line doesn't move and more people leave, right? Like a simple failover can cause, a couple minute delay for transactions. Well, a couple minutes in a lunch line, yeah, you're going to lose tons of customers at that point.
yeah. And then the final one is build out costs and delays. And this actually will come to a really fun little case study we'll talk about. But the idea is that if you're building out, an entire chain of locations, 200, 300, 400, 500 locations, the cost to build out those sites is insane these days. You're talking in the double digit tens of thousands of dollars to build out internet, and then you're going to pay a ridiculous amount of money per month to offset the build out, but you paid for the build out. So you're in a contract for a build out that you paid for. And then usually you have construction meetings, build out meetings, then you have delays associated to whatever easements and things like that have to come up. And so the construction costs go up for your new sites because you can't get the internet there on time. And so the contractors are upset. The delay, the general manager, the retail managers are upset because they can't launch their store. And you're sitting there waiting for internet, even though you ordered it 6 months in advance.
Yeah, and build out costs are not just the time alone, right? I mean, like you said, you're ready to go, but your internet's not there. What do you do, right? Even if you're not paying for that build out, like you're paying for all the other stuff that's waiting. And
yeah. And so that's a pet peeve that I never even really thought about until this case study we're going to talk about. But it was, it's an insane amount of overhead just on the internet side. That's not means everything else, electrical and construction and all the other parts. And then you're sitting there waiting the longest for what should be the simplest, right? Internet's a commodity these days. And the fact that it's the most annoying piece of that puzzle is just a kind of a shame for the build out process and for IT in a sense.
Yeah, and that's why we're seeing fixed wireless and 5G really take
Heck
over.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll obviously talk more about that here. But
yeah, 0-day connectivity. And so we talk about how does Peplink help with those things? So the first is we can increase visibility and PCI compliance, right? When you have a fixed ecosystem, and I shouldn't say fixed, a unified ecosystem where you have your modem and your router and your firewall, and it's all managed in control, and you have hundreds of sites. Now we have full visibility into those sites. We have centralized firewall policies, centralized PCI compliance, right? I can set my username and my passwords. I can set my VLAN for my point of sale system. I can make sure that VLAN, that point of sale system, has the same firewall policy across 500 locations. I can make sure that we're standardizing the security and the compliance. We also can see it. And that is amazing when you're talking about multi-location branches. And that's really the power of end control and then the ecosystem that you get with Peplink, because you can have a guest VLAN, you can have a staff of VLAN, you can have your PCI, your point of sale VLAN, and then you can have different firewall policies that apply to those subnets, those networks, all within the Peplink router. So you can say, hey, that PCI, that point of sale secure network, it can't talk to anything except for the point of sale servers on the internet. There's no access inbound or outbound. My guest network, hey, block maybe a couple sensitive categories, make sure it can't talk to anything else, make sure it's not behind my point of sale network, it's beside it, and then let it have a piece of the puzzle, let it have a piece of the broadband internet, so that that users can use that Wi-Fi, but only the like broadband Wi-Fi or broadband internet.
Mhm.
And then you have your staff network that maybe is a little bit more restricted, but they get access to 5G failover and things like that, so they stay connected, regardless of the status of your broadband circuits. And so they can have different firewall policies, but then you go, man, that's a lot to manage. No, it's only one little tiny checkbox that then you manage 500 sites or 1,000 sites or 10,000 sites. And that's the benefit, is that within control and centralized management, it's a single pane of glass. It's one simple checkbox.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
a build it once experience, right? A lot of
yeah,
other vendors, you're building it 500 times over for 500
yeah,
locations, and
you're copying
maybe,
a config.
yep,
You're copying a config. You load it. You have a template to config that you're loading, and that is not convenient at all.
no,
It's kind of a nightmare to manage across sites.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think maybe we'll get into this a little bit more, but there are other vendors that have central management and have some of those solutions as well. But I think when you actually deploy them at scale, you start to really run into the pitfalls, and where you really don't have that single pane or build it once experience,
Yeah,
even then. But
it's like it's a platform, right? But it's
yep,
not centrally managed. It's almost like a central portal, but distributed management. Like,
yeah,
and there are some features that are centrally available, but when you look at the total cost of it, versus prime care and essential, like, especially prime care pricing on our small routers, the total cost of ownership, the subscription requirement, and then the ability to centrally manage firewall policies, outbound policies, traffic shaping, your SpeedFusion VPN configurations. I did a project for a customer that's going full 5G broadband replacement, so no broadband connections at all. And they wanted to set up bonding to an EPX in a data center. And they're like, well, what's the downtime? What's the configuration? I go, I'm done. And they go, wait, what do you mean you're done? I said, it's done. I just did all 190 sites, and they're all being bonded now. And literally, I just went SpeedFusion, configure, new, select all, next, bond to the EPX, next, send all traffic, next, done. And now they were bonded. And so in the time that it took him to explain how worried he was on the amount of time needed to configure all these sites, I had already done it. And he's like, wait a second, what? I go, yeah, it's all done. And he was at one of the sites because I didn't even notice it change. I was like, yeah, but try that website that wasn't working. And he tried it. And I was like, now it's working, right? And he goes, yeah, it's because now you're in a data center with a public IP address. And so you're not being seen as a VPN or a connection. Um, and so we were able to streamline his operations and clean it up. And it took seconds, like literally seconds.
mhm.
And they were blown away by that capability. And that goes up into how can Peplink help. Number two is quick and easy, convenient deployments at any location. With Peplink and the ecosystem and that unified hardware, and it kind of had this scale down below, you can onboard any size location in seconds. And that is something that is unheard of, in my opinion, for almost anybody that's ever dealt with mobility and construction costs. You can have something as little as a BR1 mini to light up a quick internet connection, all the way to a corporate infrastructure that's running tens of thousands of users, and literally that you can have them up and running in seconds with integrated 5G, integrated fixed wireless capabilities, and then onboard or light up the internet for their fiber. I was doing a project this weekend in San Francisco. The fiber wasn't ready. Well, I just took a Starlink, threw it in, plugged it into the SDX router that they were there, the HA SDX routers. I trunked that VLAN into their core switch, literally plugged the Starlink into the core switch. Then I just did the VLAN as WAN feature in the HA pair of Peplinks down to their switch stack. Just said, hey, VLAN 3001 is my Starlink, and boom, the SDXs came online. Didn't waste an internet port, no Ethernet ports wasted on it, And then as soon as the carrier came in, they plugged in their internet to the fiber ports on the SDX. I said, okay, what's the IP address? Lit it up, brought it online, and then I had the Starlink and the new gig fiber line online and working. And but I was able to do it yesterday while I was doing, while I was down here back in Florida already. And so the ability to zero touch these devices, bring them online instantaneously with almost any possible internet, really speeds up deployment and simplifies that access.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people don't really realize, when you deploy these things, everybody's kind of just looking at it as the day one or day zero perspective. But, if you're a large chain and you've got 500 locations, you're going to make changes, right? There's going to be a new model that comes out. There's going to be this or that changes hardware wise, maybe, right? You're going to have this for many, many years. So you start out with like 100 of this model, and maybe it's really easy with another vendor to push Wi-Fi or push VLANs in that case. But then, yeah, you start adding different models, and a lot of these other clouds don't let you manage multiple models or manage an access point and a router the same way so that you can have a consistent SSID. There's just a lot of pitfalls that play out over the total life cycle of these deployments. And that's again where people really feel that benefit with Peplink, and that they don't lose that ease of management as the deployment grows and evolves.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can have, what's nice is, once again, you could have, like, if you're going to have broadband circuits or internet, you could have like a single cellular device, like the B1, the BR1, the 310 5G, etc., and have 5G failover. Or you can do like full broadband replacement with our dual cellular devices, like the BR2 and the BR2 Pro and the Transit Duo. And then you can have like full infrastructure reliability with like the MBX and the SDX and the EPX. And so same ecosystem, same zero touch configuration, same firewall policies, but without the but scalable based on the size of the location you're at. Tom asked, he talked about our firewall policies, and he says, are there any enhancements? We're missing quite a few corporate features, including things such as IPS and IDS application awareness. First of all, Tom, Peplink has had IPS and IDS for quite some time now. Now we have application aware content blocking. We can block like TikTok and Facebook and different applications. I don't know if you know the exact number, Travis, but every firmware they keep adding more applications. So we're DPI aware, layer 7 aware, application aware, content filtering for like pornography and malware and ad aware, as well as inbound, outbound, and net flow. So I have an entire firewall. Yeah, several hundred.
It's something that we get scored on for, like, when we get ranked on these quadrants and things. Those are things that there's baseline requirements to even beyond those. And so we've got several hundred applications in those signatures for firewalls, for routing policies.
Yeah. And we do have a webinar, the Peplink University, on firewall. That was one of the ones we did, was kind of fun, where we go over some of these firewall features, because people think of us just as an SD-WAN or a WAN aggregator, but we have actually a pretty robust firewall. And I'm actually today sitting in a site where we are replacing several firewall and core switches with Peplink 2500 ECs. That's actually where I'm at today doing this install. And so, Peplink's firewall capabilities have really stepped up their game. Obviously there's always things you would like to see improved. I think you could say that about any vendor. But yeah, our firewall capabilities, we meet or exceed NIST standards for cryptography. We're PCI compliant. We're FIPS compliant, from at least coming with the new chip coming here soon. So there's a lot of options for capabilities around that. Someone asked about where to find the previous Peplink University. You can either go to youtube.com/Peplink, and there's a webinars tab, Peplink University. Or you can go to, it's coming soon. I believe it's going to be launched here in just a few days, but we also are consolidating everything to peplinkuniversity.com. So peplinkuniversity.com will have a list of all of the Peplink webinars. Or you can go to youtube.com/peplink and then go to the playlist, and then you'll find the Peplink University series there. And so that's where you can find all those videos. But we try to talk about all these different technologies and have them out there and ready and available for you, like outbound policies and firewall policies and things like that. Okay,
Yeah,
so let's move on. Oh, go
I'll
ahead.
throw a link up to the current.
Playlist.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then Peplink brings enhanced customer experiences like Wi-Fi, in-store Wi-Fi hotspots with custom branding and captive portals. So you can have with Peplink built into the ecosystem, we have captive portals for guest Wi-Fi. We have multiple SSIDs. Most of our routers support 16 SSIDs. Some of them support 4 SSIDs, but either way, they support more than one. And so you can have staff Wi-Fi, you can have a guest Wi-Fi, you can have your logo and it redirect appropriately through to your website. And so you can have, hey, here's our guest network. They hit continue or accept the agreement of terms of use, and then it redirect to your menu or your landing page or your social media, like, hey, rate us on Google, etc. And so you can redirect them to a landing page of your choice, all built right into the Peplink ecosystem. So it allows you to quickly gather insights into users of the Wi-Fi users, but also have like the ability to have that captive portal with time and bandwidth requirements and visibility to who your users are.
Yeah, and I think, captive portal and guest Wi-Fi isn't the most important thing for a retail shop, but it is really important. I mean, and it's a complication that isn't necessarily directly driving money to them. And so it's something that businesses don't want to spend a lot of money on, but again, people want it, people need it as part of that customer experience that people expect. And so again, this is a platform. This isn't just a router, right? This is a platform that you can add these different things in. You can have these capabilities and features, and you don't have to keep spending money to get those things. You bought a Peplink router for your failover. You already have the captive portal solution built in. You just need to set it up or have Peter come set it up for you. But yeah, it's a platform, right? It's not a router.
Exactly. And so, and like I mentioned kind of already, but we have scalable router ecosystem for almost any type of deployment, whether it's an ATM or a large corporate office. And so you're going to be able to have the same unified ecosystem and feel across all sites, which I find to be very useful.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too. Like if we look at that model line up there, and we try to do all those locations with a traditional enterprise SD-WAN vendor, how much money are you going to spend a month on that ATM site if you're using, one of those big names out there in the enterprise? If you look at that Magic Quadrant, the people at the very, very top on there, how much money will that cost you a month to have 1,000 ATMs with true SD-WAN failover? It's not
So curious,
feasible.
Travis, how much is it monthly for Peplink?
There is no monthly cost, right? I mean, as
What?
long as you keep your in control warranty, you just keep that
But
care plan.
even if not, I
Yeah,
mean, our Peplink products are perpetual. You just lose in control.
true. And
I
you
mean,
speed fusion feature even after
exactly.
it's expired. So yeah, that's an excellent
So
point.
yeah, I mean, so in control being a really nice cloud platform is awesome, but the reality is that one of the coolest things about Peplink, especially when you're talking about someone that's budget conscious, you don't need our cloud, and all of our equipment works perpetually. And so if you are the kind of person that goes, hey, I don't like the cloud, I don't want those features, I just want to have a reliable failover and an ecosystem, you can manage all of these devices yourself. And there's an open API. So if you're incredibly creative, you can write your own in control cloud and literally log into these routers and have your own private solution. And so there's a publicly documented API that all these routers work on completely free. So, I've had customers write their own scripting capabilities that onboard devices with even further zero touch based on their protocols. And so that's what's kind of neat about the ecosystem is it's not locked down. You own the environment, which is very rare in today's world. Most companies own you and they own your infrastructure. Peplink, you own it. You own the network, you own the infrastructure. We just help you get it connected. And so we're going to do that with in control and zero touch configuration capabilities, but you own it. And I think that's really neat, especially in today's world where if you don't renew your warranty, your whole network gets shut down with some vendors.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I don't, sometimes I'll name names, but I'm naming them here because this is just, I think it's so egregious and it's so crazy to me that this is how it works. If you buy Meraki and put that in your 500 locations and you stop paying them, what happens? Your networks go down. That's
yeah,
insane. They've hijacked
that's
you.
nuts.
You
Yeah,
are
you
their
spend
servant now. You must pay to continue. Like,
yeah, you spend thousands of dollars on services and equipment, and then if you don't renew the warranty or you're having a bad month or whatever it might be, you're done. You're down.
yeah, nine times
And
out of
that,
10, people just forgot, right? And then
yeah,
holy crap, my whole business went down because I just forgot to renew. It's like that's insane, right? That's just
yeah.
people need to realize that, right? You're putting yourself at huge risk if you choose one of those solutions. That's just a practical reality of other vendors' solutions that they don't want to talk about that, of course, but yeah.
And so then we can talk about how Peplink helps in these retail and branch locations like ATMs and remote outposts. Um, what's nice about Peplink Speed Fusion technology is the ability to aggregate WAN. So we can create what's called a hot failover. Hot failover and bonding allow you to aggregate multiple internet connections together to create a seamless, reliable, session persistent transaction, which means ATMs, if you have a small little DSL or broadband modem powering it, and then a failover 4G or 5G connection. If you're in the middle of a transaction and you're using a Peplink router with Speed Fusion, the broadband connection is your primary, the 5G, 4G is your backup. However, in the middle of a transaction with Speed Fusion, that actually never gets interrupted. So if somebody's in the middle of a transaction and the broadband goes down, the 4G and 5G seamlessly picks up the transaction and continues the operation because of Speed Fusion technology. This is incredibly valuable once we talk about that transaction stability, right? That end user, that customer experience. They feel more safe. They feel confident that their transactions are going through. And as a business, you don't have to worry about, oh, check that transaction, make sure it's okay, right? Because I know that no matter what, whether it's broadband or 4G, 5G, I'm going to be connected and those transactions are going to happen with stability and confidence.
Yep.
And we have really incredibly low cost solutions for those. I mean, those Cat 4 and Cat 7 BR1 minis are incredibly cost effective, designed for this scenario where they're ruggedized and you can put them right inside the ATM machines or your kiosks to be able to process transactions.
Yeah, and I think this is
And
Peplink really combines two things that I talk about this a little bit, but there's enterprise players in the market, and then there's like these really low cost vendors in the market, right? Just the cheap throwaway type devices. And so Peplink spans both of those, and we've got these devices that reach those lower price points, but you get all those same enterprise features, right? If you buy that cheap throwaway product, you don't get that hot failover. You
yep,
don't get any of those things. You just bought a thing that's going to only do that exact thing that day you bought it, and it might not even get a firmware update after that. But we
but
treat
usually because of the
all
lack
of the
of central
same.
management, you don't even know if it needs a
Yeah,
firmware update or know how to, or you're afraid to push the firmware updates. And then what
it will
happens is
work
that
or not.
broadband fails, you lose the transactions, you have to wait for the 4G, 5G to establish connect and then fail over and reestablish an IPsec VPN or whatever connection is to your services. And then it starts working. So you can be down 30 to 90 seconds for that IPsec tunnel to reestablish. And that's, that means customers are waiting and can't do transactions.
Yeah, and you wait that 30 to 90 seconds for the failover to happen. You might have to reboot the POS terminal then too to get it back up. And like there's just all this fallout that happens for automatic failover, right?
Yep.
It's just not the same as Peplink's experience.
So then we can talk about like pop-up and mobile experiences. Pop-up locations, pop-up retail stores, pop-up environments are happening all over the country right now, or world, I should say. They're really popular. These pop-up stores where you're trying to have quick and access to either a retail location, maybe at an event like the Super Bowl or something like that, or you're just testing your environment. You're spinning up a quick pop-up location to test your product at a location. And the ability to have seamless connectivity while doing that, be able to spin up these pop-up stores quickly is incredibly important. And that's where Peplink has our multi-cellular routers for this purpose. So we talked about ATM and remote outposts with a single cellular failover solution. Then we talk about pop-up mobile experiences where we're talking about dual 4G and dual 5G. So if you're talking about just point of sale, just critical application, you could do like a dual 4G solution where you only need a couple megabits of internet, but you need it to be incredibly reliable. And that's critical right there. I need it to work regardless of AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. I need to make sure that those transactions to occur, and I might have tens or even hundreds of these little tiny micro transactions occurring, and I need them to be stable. So with bonding, with SpeedFusion bonding, we can aggregate multiple SIM cards together to create a really robust network connection instantaneously. So these 0 day, people will say 0 day, or so without any build out time, without any needing to order a broadband connection, these pop-up experiences can put a BR2 or a transit duo or a B1 with a max adapter, B1 5G with a max adapter, throw one of these dual 5G or 4G solutions out there, and have these transactions instantaneously available for these pop-up stores. But we've been doing a lot of this with one of the major carriers right now for their pop-up retail locations, helping them streamline deployments. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you do all that,
all,
and you still maintain PCI compliance. You still have that
Yep.
easy scalability, right? It's no different than a brick and mortar store from a work to the administrator, right? It's all the same.
We had a customer reach out to us a couple years ago, probably a year and a half ago now, they were trying to spin up a retail location in time to launch the Super Bowl in Phoenix, Arizona. The ISP, the broadband provider, was not able to get the circuit in, and even if they could, it was $56,000 to bring in that circuit to the location, the retail location. And the CIO just was like, no, like, holy cow, no, there has to be a better solution. He found Peplink, found us. Within 48 hours, I had a BR2 Pro overnighted to him with two 5G modems at T-Mobile and AT&T. They had their store up and running. It took a couple minutes to set up the store, and they were able to then launch in time for the Super Bowl and run seamlessly and flawlessly throughout the Super Bowl experience for them. After that event, they canceled all of their broadband contracts and bought BR2s, UBRs and BR2s for all of their remaining stores that they were onboarding. And it was game changer for them. Instead of having 6 months of biweekly carrier meetings to just plug in a broadband circuit, they literally just mail a modem or a router and an antenna to the location. The construction crew plugs it in and turns it on, and they have internet. And they are now running full broadband replaced with bonded 4G and 5G solutions. It's incredibly incredibly powerful to be able to onboard a location with near zero setup experience and have construction workers and retail and your employees functioning on day one, right then and there, without having to have all those meetings.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been such an amazing testimonial to the power of Peplink. We can't get enough of it. It's such a powerful testimonial to how fixed wireless is changing the game plan for people. And then we can talk about temporary and small offices, our small branches. You might go, oh, that's really neat for a little point of sale transaction, but we have an entire building. We have a whole office that needs to power. And that's why Peplink has extended. We have the SDX and the EPX, and we have these high-powered routers that can have 2, 4, or even 40 5G and 4G and Starlink connections that you can light up to create basically any bandwidth requirement that you need. So just to be a little bit more realistic, and for most people, you take an SDX with 2 5G modems, you can plug this in and have bonded 5G as a broadband replacement and or broadband auxiliary, like supplement for increased stability, uh, built right into your ecosystem, right? One piece of hardware that powers the entire infrastructure for even large facilities. So once again, this same retailer, their central food processing, their central kitchens, they now run SDXs with HD2LR domes on the roof of the buildings. And so they have our high gain, long range, high power 5G domes plugged right into the SDXs. That gives them full 0-day connectivity. So they're not waiting for the, I mean, they brought on their kitchen like 3 or 4 months ago, the most recent one. But because of the HD2 long range, we literally had that mounted to the roof on the first day of construction, plugged that into the SDX, and they were online and up and running. And they didn't have to think about or worry about the connectivity.
I
And
think that's
so,
cool because you can carry a site from like the first shovel in the ground to
yeah,
been up and running for 5 years on the same piece of equipment, the same
yep.
hardware, the same sims, everything, right?
And, and just last week, we plugged in the fiber. It took that long to get connected.
Wow.
Just last week, we finally got Spectrum Fiber plugged in and they into that building. And it was like, it took months. It was months delayed. The landlord never couldn't sign an easement for boring. They had to then trunk it in through a different MDF solution and wire it through. And it took months. And they would have been down for months. But instead, they just were running on, and now it's just failed over. And now they have the 5G modems as the backup, and then the fiber is the primary.
Yeah, and
So,
I'm sure they're very confident their backup works great because they used it for that long, right?
yep. Chris asked an interesting question. Will we run out of radio bandwidth anytime soon? That's an interesting question, Chris. But more importantly, if you notice, like we started with like EVDO and then like cellular at 1X and then EVDO and then went to LTE, 4G, like 3G and 4G and now 5G. The companies are getting really good at repurposing those old frequencies. One of the biggest things that T-Mobile has done by buying Sprint was getting that old frequency. They're buying those old slow frequencies and then repurposing them for 5G and 6G. So yeah, there is a limited frequency in a coverage area, but the carriers are incredibly good at maximizing those frequencies, upgrading the radios to support more bandwidth and more capabilities. And so every 6 months, it's like a new iteration of optimization of those channels and availability. And there's a lot of frequency now available. I mean, we're going all the way from 600 megahertz to just over 3,700 megahertz of frequency that's readily available. And really the spectrum goes all the way to 6 gigahertz now on what we call the sub-6 frequency, which is it's not just one or two bands that are available. I mean, there's a lot of frequency bands available. And that's only like I said, the sub-6. And then we go into the millimeter wave, and you're talking like 31 gigahertz all the way to I think 34 gigahertz of frequency range there. And so there's a lot of frequency available for playing around. And these carriers are incredibly good at repurposing the old channels and making them faster and better with modern technology. So I think there could be some bottlenecks in the future, but I think as technology improves, the frequency availability just gets more broad. And I'm
Yeah.
not an RF engineer. I'm not skilled or qualified to speak much more than that. It's just my experience in it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a great answer. I mean, when might you run out of radio bandwidth? Like maybe between 4 and 6 p.m. today in certain locations, right? Like overall, like yes, they've got spectrum and they're repurposing it, and millimeter wave kind of started and fizzled at first, but we'll see another wave of that in a few more years once these other sub-6 bands really do start getting saturated and in a wider scale. But there's always more uses. The more high quality sources of bandwidth, the more applications that are possible out in the field. And so that's, we're here to utilize those and take advantage of those. And, that's a never ending game. So adding more WANs is always something you're going to need, and being able to combine those as well.
So let's talk about the routers that are currently available, on the available to solve these different missions on specifically around the retail space. I mean, we talked about the girth and scale, but let's go back to the retail connectivity and the routers that are available right now. Um, if you've heard about the 20X or the 20, those have been retired end of life. We now have the B1. So you have the B1 Plus. The B1 Plus is a 4G failover router. So you can have your broadband and then 4G failover. Incredible price point here for this router. So it's going to be, almost the lowest cost Peplink bonding failover router that you can get. Wi-Fi 6 connectivity, based on the B1 platform, but just with a nice, affordable 4G connection. Great for point of sale failover. The 4G is probably not going to power your guest Wi-Fi network, but it's gonna give you the throughput to make sure that your point of sale applications, your business critical transactions occur. And then we go to the B1 5G. This is going to have your Ethernet for your broadband, but then a single 5G modem. This is going to be great for full business redundancy. A lot of times your cable modems or your broadband providers might only go out for a few minutes. The interruption of services, reboots, etc. The 5G is going to seamlessly kick in. The transactions are going to seamlessly take over, and you can probably most of the time even carry your guest Wi-Fi transactions. You're only talking a few minutes. Guest Wi-Fi continues to operate, and then the cable modem comes back online. So it's a great way to have that resiliency and extra bandwidth needed to keep the entire business up and running during an outage of your broadband service. Then we go into what we call, full broadband replacement. So these are going to be dual 4G and dual 5G routers designed to actually replace broadband if you don't want to pay that bill or you want to have 0-day capabilities. So this is going to be the Transit Duo. And the brand new, if you're a partner on this webinar, you should have gotten the announcement this morning. The brand new BR2 is going to be launching on July 11th for the public. So this is it looks very similar if you're kind of playing around in our wheelhouse for a while to the UBR. So the UBR is now being rebranded as the BR2. And so you're going to have this UBR BR2 new device. So it's important to understand the Transit Duo is a dual 4G Cat7 and Cat12, whereas the BR2, which if you remember the old UBR, dual Cat4. This is designed for low bandwidth applications, but dual carrier reliability. And so this is awesome for your sites that maybe need, an incredibly reliable 10 to 15 megabits of throughput. You can get more by all means. I've seen it 40, 50, 60, even 100 megs of throughput. But realistically, you're going to be in that sub 20 megs of stable throughput. And so you can have this dual Cat4 device really giving you capabilities to run your business without the need for broadband, with either the new BR2 and the Transit Duos. Then if you're looking for full broadband replacement, so you're looking to get 100, 200, 300 megs of download throughput with a stable upload throughput, very similar to a cable modem, that 100 by 10, 300 by 20, that's what you're going to get with the BR2. You're going to get dual 5G capabilities. You can bond T-Mobile and AT&T or Verizon, and then you're going to have that stable download and stable upload with bonding. So we can aggregate those together to create an incredibly reliable download and upload for business Wi-Fi, for guest Wi-Fi, for your point of sale applications, et cetera, and really fully replace the broadband circuit. That's going to give you no build times, no build costs. And the only thing I'm going to add to this is the antenna matters. Where you place your antenna and getting that antenna, having a nice high gain antenna, and it's going to matter. In some locations, you could probably use the little black stick antennas and you'll be fine. Some antennas, you could probably go to a 42G or a 40G up there and you'll be fine. Some locations, you might want to get that antenna outside. If you're in a bad coverage area, get that antenna outside to maximize reception for 4G and 5G. And that's the only thing that you need to really pay attention to when you're doing a full 4G or full 5G type of deployment, is making sure that the antenna location gives you the bandwidth that you need to accomplish the mission. So if you're only looking for 10 megs of throughput and putting a 40G antenna inside the building gives you 15, 20 megs of throughput, great, leave it alone. But if you're only getting 3 or 4 megs of throughput inside, put that antenna outside. Drill a hole in the side, have your construction guys mount that antenna outside. If you can't put it outside, a really high gain internal antenna like the Maritime 40G, it's gonna pretty much get you internet anywhere and everywhere you go. So don't be discouraged if you do a speed test and realize it's not getting the throughput you need. Reach out to your Peplink partner, or if you are a partner, you're going to be able to just make sure that you're looking at the throughput and signal. Chris, you just asked a question: does Peplink offer high gain antennas? Yes, we do. We have great antennas going all the way from little stick antennas all the way to high performance maritime antennas that I actually call fixed wireless antennas. We've taken these Maritime 40G antennas and I've used them to provide over 500 megs of download throughput on areas where I was getting 3 megabits on my cell phone speed test. And so the Maritime antennas are 36 inches long. And so they're going to have great reception and great transmit power, which means when you're dealing with inside of a brick building, or you're trying to get coverage in an area where maybe you can't penetrate the outside of the building, or you're in a really rural area and you want to maximize the ability to receive that signal, you can take these Maritime antennas and screw them into the wall, and you're going to get pretty much guaranteed a better signal. And anybody I've ever called me and said, hey, I'm having a problem, we mail them a Maritime, hey, plug this in and see if it works. And they go, okay, how much does it cost? And then they'll, because the antenna, because it works. But they're expensive. So they work. But if you don't need it, then don't buy it. What you want to do is just be aware that you might have to have good antennas on some complex and areas. Sometimes the little black stick antennas are providing enough bandwidth. Done. No reason to buy a $200 or $400 or $600 antenna if a little black antenna gives you the bandwidth you need. But those few times the black antennas don't work, that's when you just want to evaluate a better antenna. And so have those in your construction guy's toolkit that just says, hey, if you're not getting the bandwidth you need, check the antenna.
Yeah, and I think similar to the product line with the hardware models we showed, we've got a ladder of like smaller all the way up to the really big stuff. And the same applies on the antenna side, right?
Yeah.
We've got this ladder of solutions for you to climb. If this isn't enough for this location, hey, we've got another rung that you can climb to, and now we can hit that number, right? So when you find Peplink, you've got the platform, you've got the accessories, you've got all of those things all paired together, all designed in-house, right? These aren't third-party antennas. We design every one of these antennas ourselves. We figure out which products they're going to make the most sense with, and we make sure that they're going to do that job and serve that mission the best.
I have a customer just this morning that's been a huge fan of the Transit Duo Pro, but he's doing a broadcast in an area that there's not enough bandwidth for the dual 4G. And so we mailed him a demo MBX 5G and it's like, here, try this. This will solve your problem. Because as much as you would love the coverage to be perfect everywhere, it's not. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. And so we have to be aware that there's no one size fits all unless you want to buy an EPX for everywhere. I mean, so it's just being aware that some locations, the coverage and the throughput aren't there. And so we have to then figure out and get creative and solve that problem. And you solve that problem by throwing more at it, right? If I'm 5 users on the tower instead of 2 users on the tower, I've got 5 times more opportunity for capacity. And so we have to adapt to those scenarios while keeping it within the restraints of a moderate budget.
Yeah, and if you're like doing a store within a store type of deployment, like you talked about, you laid it out so well in terms of like, if you're here and it's not working, then move it over there. If it's not working there, then drill the hole. And when you're doing some of these retail configurations, you don't have all of those options every time, right? If you're a store within a store, you don't get to drill, right? There's just that you're not allowed to. You got to work inside of there. And so maybe you use an antenna instead, maybe you use a bigger antenna, or maybe you switch from 4G to 5G. So there's lots of different options to work around those problems, regardless of the scenario and how many different offshoot locations you have to deal with. Yep.
But like the Transit Duo or the BR2 solves 90% of your missions. Take that as a win and just be aware that the 10% that doesn't, maybe we have to do a BR2 Pro instead. get a
Yep.
little bit more throughput. And you saved yourself a bunch of money on the 90% that work great with the BR2. You don't buy a whole bunch of BR2 Pros just because you want to cover that 10% variance. You buy the BR2 because you want to use 5G broadband replacement. But if your mission only needs a couple megabits of throughput, the BR2 and the Transit Duo are going to be fine. It's if you're
Yeah.
looking for that 100 meg by 10 meg connection, you want that broadband connection all the time. That's when you go to the BR2 Pro. And
Yep.
so, if you don't need that, then don't waste the money. As much as I would love to sell them to you, and Peplink would probably love to ship them to you, that's not the mission though. And so build out based on your mission, but understand that some sites that might not be enough, and we just have to accept that as a necessity.
Yep. And again, mixing and matching those two models doesn't create more work for you
Yeah,
from an
it's the same firewall policies, same outbound policies, same zero touch configuration. And so it's a nice thing to have there. And we talk about PEP, so we're going to move on to, we only got 8 minutes left, so I'm going to get these last 2 slides in, but we talk about Peplink Solutions. It's so funny too, because every time I think, oh, there's not enough slides, we're not going to have enough content. And then sure enough, it's like, oh my gosh, we're always running out of time. It's so funny to me.
I think the eSIM thing is another really big one
Yeah.
for retail.
And he goes right into Chris, who just asked about omni SIMs or multi-carrier SIMs is how we refer to it. And the answer, Chris, is sometimes. When you're talking about multi-carrier SIMs, usually there's a level of metered feet function to it. So when you're talking, so depending on the bandwidth utilization, you want to evaluate your plans. If you're going to do full broadband replacement, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile have broadband plans. They'll give you hundreds of gigabytes for a fraction for pennies on the dollar. And so you want to make sure, and there are now MVNO plans, omni SIMs or multi-carrier SIMs that offer broadband plans as well, giving you hundreds of gigabytes. But if you buy a metered plan, an IoT SIM that's $4 to $18 a gig, and you plug that in, and then you give a guest Wi-Fi and run 25 terabytes, you're gonna be mad when you get that bill. So be aware of the data consumption that you're using. And if you're new to it, watch it daily. If you're on a metered plan and you think, hey, I might be okay with this, that's, I'm just running my point of sale transactions, a couple gigabytes a month. It's way more cost effective to do a metered plan or some sort of multi-carrier plan. Just make sure that the bandwidth consumption is matching your expectations on cost. Because they're not forgiving. So if you are, but if you know what you're consuming, heck yeah. And then for everybody else, broadband plans give you a lot of gigabytes for a much better fixed monthly cost. And so you can minimize the cost per gigabyte that way. And there are MVNO or multi-carrier SIMs now that are offering broadband plans. So you can always look into those as well, where you're looking at Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. I do recommend diversity. I think diversity is by far one of the most powerful things to our ecosystem, our internet ecosystem in America, is that we have the ability to choose a carrier. And when you're talking about owning your own equipment, like we talked about previously, there's no contracts. They're not going to lock you. I can buy a T-Mobile SIM, an AT&T SIM, a Verizon SIM. If I'm buying just the data plan, that's no contract. So if it's not working at one store or it doesn't work well enough, I can switch to a different one, and it's not a big deal. I own the equipment, I own the infrastructure, so I don't have to worry about that. And for those of you that know that how much bandwidth you're using, Peplink has amazing data plans that to solve that, or other multi-carrier capabilities. And so the Peplink eSIM has a built-in program that you can actually buy 10, 20, 100, or even a terabyte of data and have it managed for your entire 100, 200, 500, 1,000 locations. And you have one data pool, all 3 carriers. And there's also other multi-carrier SIMs out there that are great, and they work and you can push those eSIMs directly to the Peplink router. So if you don't like the Peplink's data plans, you can bring your own. You can bring your own carriers, you can bring your own broadband plans, and you can bring your own eSIMs. So that's another thing about Peplink. You own the network. We're just providing you tools. And that's really important. If you're a carrier, a multi SIM carrier, we will work with you. We're not trying to compete against that. But for someone looking for really easy 10, 20 terabyte of data that they could just buy and deploy, it's phenomenal. It's built
Yeah.
right into in control and the ecosystem. It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, Peplink eSIM, like you said, works with all third-party SIMs, right? You don't have to buy the SIM data plan from Peplink to use the eSIM. You can just use the QR code. You can use the carrier's provisioning tools, push those eSIMs out. That works with all those plans. But then the Peplink eSIM data plan, there's no monthly cost. There's no
Yep.
monthly cost. It doesn't matter how many stores you have, 500 stores, there's no monthly cost. I'm
Yep.
going to repeat
It's
that again.
amazing.
No monthly cost, right?
So what I normally do, Travis, and I've had a lot of fun with this, is I buy a 1 terabyte pool plan on
Yep.
for West Networks. And literally, if I need like immediate provisioning to bring a site online, I go, what's your serial number? Oh, and I just type it in. I give it 500 megabytes of data, and then I bring it online. I can program it. I can support it, and then I just delete the eSIM, and I get my 500, 480 gigabytes megabytes back.
Yep.
And so we as a company, we just buy the data, we just buy a 1 terabyte plan, and we just keep reloading the 1 terabyte plan. And it is stupid convenient, if I'm allowed to say that on a webinar. Like the
Oh yeah.
ability to just, I mean, I've even had like I said, we work with some of the big carriers. Like, hey, can you load one of your eSIMs real fast? And we'll load up the eSIM, program the APN, get it all configured, and then I just delete the data, and so I get all my data back.
Yep.
And so as a IT guy, the ability to just quickly provision any router without ever having to think about what's plugged into it, that the Peplink data plan is awesome for that. I think it's
Yep.
incredibly powerful.
Yeah, people will sit there and look at the dollars per gig, and it's just that's not the point here, right? The point
Yeah.
is you can scale it to hundreds of locations, you can do it for short little bits of time. It's that convenience tool, it's that failover plan that actually works for people's budgets finally, right? It's a different animal than that carrier's fixed wireless unlimited broadband, right? It's not that.
Yep.
Go to them for that.
So we talk about immediate connectivity with Peplink routers. I mean, it provides 0-day instant connectivity. So we've kind of beat that one down this session. So I'll leave that one alone. We actually talked about the Peplink antennas, maximize your 4G and 5G throughput. So once again, streamlining ecosystem, you can use one partner tech support for your hardware needs. So you get the Peplink router and the antennas as a unified solution. And then finally, reliable backup battery. Make sure that your router has a backup battery. Keep it up and running. And if you have a whole bunch of network equipment, it's a lot harder to keep it up and running during a power outage. When you have a little tiny Transit Duo or BR2 or and that's all you're running at 12 watts, you can run for hours on a standard phone battery system. Peplink also now released that USB-C to a 12-volt power adapter. So now we have a 12-volt power that goes to dual USB-C, which means you can plug it into a wall outlet and plug it into a battery and literally have uninterrupted power with just a simple USB-C power dock. So the USB-C, I don't know if you know that part number off the top of your head, Travis, but that USB-C cable, it's okay if you don't. But the ability to have, and then what's also cool is you go to 2 USB-C power banks and actually hot swap them, because so you could run for a long time, and so you don't have to have an expensive system, and that's what we're trying to get at. Retail location, when you're talking about 400, 500, 10,000 locations, every additional purchase is multiplied by 10,000. And so if I can keep that cost low, if I can make sure that it's scalable and supportable, then we can more than happy to push that out, keep that cost low for your retail locations.
I'm going to put a link to all the Peplink accessories in the chat as well, because
There
that
you go.
includes that cable and all these other cool things that we have. Again, this is the ecosystem, the platform. We've got a lot of these details figured out already, so you don't have to stress about those too.
And yeah, so then I talked about this already. It's simple to deploy. So you have your Wi-Fi 6 AP, you have your 4G or 5G connectivity. You can plug in your different VLANs for secure point of sale, guest networks, staff networks, keeping everything isolated. And it's one piece of equipment. One piece of equipment that requires low power, easy to manage, easy to scale. And you can even create VPNs with our SpeedFusion VPN, going back to your corporate headquarters if you have non-cloud connected systems. And so the idea is simple to deploy, easy to manage, less hardware, less cost, making retail deployments incredibly resilient and reliable and scalable. And we've already kind of ran out of time and answering some questions on the fly. I'll leave it open for one or two more questions if you have any questions. But otherwise, this is just another Peplink University series. Once again, we're trying to launch peplinkuniversity.com, which will have all of this information centralized for you, resources, links to training, etc. Yes, we have devices with 3 WAN ports. The Balance 380, the 305. Also, the B1 is dual WAN, but has a vWAN. So you can turn one of the LAN ports into a WAN ports. So the B1 5G is dual Ethernet WAN with a virtual WAN, which means you can convert the Ethernet into the Ethernet LAN into a WAN. That gives you 3. Any of our routers that support vWAN, which is almost all of them now, you can convert LAN ports into WAN ports. So you can buy either a single or a dual or even triple vWAN license and basically extend the number of WAN ports. But the B1 5G, the Balance 380X is a great little triple WAN router with the 5G module capabilities. The 310 5G with the vWAN license, once again, would give you the three WANs that you would need as well. So that would be my recommendations for triple WAN routers.
Yeah, the number of physical labeled WAN ports is less.
It's sort of
now
ambiguous these days. Yeah, I was doing this job just this weekend with the SDX. Only has 2 Ethernet WANs, and I needed more WANs, and I literally just bought a 2 vWAN license pack, had it pushed out in a few minutes, and then lit up my additional WANs. So with the vWAN license, you can convert LAN ports into WAN ports or even trunk WANs over your LAN through your IDFs. So that gives incredible scalability there. But otherwise, thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can email travis@peplink.com or my new email address, peterw@peplink.com. So you can email us and ask questions directly. And if there's anything that you need, please let us know. And this once again will be published. These slides and video will be published to Peplink's YouTube channel, and will be coming to peplinkuniversity.com as well. And then if you like this content, I'm gonna throw this out there real fast. So hopefully Travis will let me. We offer on-site training. So we have the Peplink Tech Summit coming in November. peplinkTechSummit.com, and you can learn Peplink certified sales, Peplink certified associate, as well as the new Peplink certified engineer, meet and greet fellow Peplink enthusiasts and learn about the technology. So it's gonna be November 3rd in Orlando, Florida, peplinkTechSummit.com. I hope you can join us there. Otherwise, thank you so much. Thank you, Travis, for once again hosting and having this amazing dialogue.
Yeah, Peter, thank you as always as well. This is great again. And everybody, thanks for joining. Thanks for looking into Peplink. We'll talk to you in a month.
Talk to you next month. Bye.
Bye.